I'm Curtis Smith, and welcome to my book talk on David Grann's The Lost City of Z, A Tale of Deadly Obsession in the Amazon. This book focuses on an almost lost breed of person, the gentleman adventurer. The heyday of the gentleman adventurer was in the early 20th century, where men like the hero of The Lost City of Z, Colonel Percy Harrison Fawcett, tramped around the world into the unknown, exploring for the sheer joy and pleasure and glory of being an explorer. The author of this story, David Grann, a longtime staff writer at The New Yorker, describes Fawcett as the last of the great Victorian explorers who ventured into uncharted realms with little more than a machete, a compass, and an almost divine sense of purpose. Fawcett was considered a superhero in his day, and it is rumored that the character of Indiana Jones is partially based on Fawcett's adventures. Now, this book has actually been optioned to become a movie with Brad Pitt playing the role of Colonel Fawcett, but it seems to have run into production issues. Colonel Fawcett still has a following to this day of a group of people called Fawcett's Freaks, and they have all the requisite obsessive behaviors and conspiracy theories about what actually happened to Colonel Fawcett. Now, The Lost City of Z has an interesting structure to its narrative. Its primary focus is on the explorations of Colonel Fawcett, leading up to his disappearance in 1925 while trying to find a fabled city in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, one that would demonstrate that at one point there had been a great society in the middle of that rainforest itself. Intertwined with Fawcett's history are the stories of other explorers, along with the adventures of the author, David Grann, who decided that he, a born and bred New Yorker who had never camped before in his life, would follow in the footsteps of Colonel Fawcett in an attempt to find out both what happened to the Colonel and if there was any existence or truth to the existence of the Lost City of Z. Now, I'm going to call this book a gateway book because it opens the door for a reader to go into many subsequent directions. It's a history with mentions of all the key members of Victorian society, including royalty, writers like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the other great adventurers of the time like Ernest Shackleton. It's a travel book that talks about the mysterious South American countries, both from an early 20th and early 21st century perspective. It's a nature and science book that talks about all the unique flora and fauna and animal life that Colonel Fawcett and his crew faced in the Amazon. It's definitely a character-driven adventure story following the exploits of Colonel Fawcett and his peers. And ultimately, it's a tragedy when it talks about Colonel Fawcett's disappearance and the very visceral reaction that was had by the world at large when it came to light that he was gone. Now, it's tough just to pick a few read-alikes, but I'll make an attempt here. From a stylistic perspective, a fairly obvious choice would be The Devil and Sherlock Holmes, another book written by David Grann. It's a series of 12 stories that were previously published mostly in The New Yorker and involved topics including the death of a Sherlock Holmes aficionado, the infiltration of the Aryan Brotherhood into the U.S. prison system, or riding in a skiff searching for an elusive giant squid. This book further highlights Grann's method of character-driven narrative, mixed with all sorts of exotic locales and interesting historical backgrounds. From a subject perspective, River of Doubt, Theodore Roosevelt's Darkest Journey by Candace Millard is a good choice. After losing the 1912 presidential election, Roosevelt decided to embark on the toughest physical challenge that he could find, and that ultimately turned out to be mapping a previously uncharted tributary of the Amazon River. Similar to Grann, Millard captures the really intense character of Theodore Roosevelt and meshes that in with a beautiful description of the natural background of the Amazon. For young adults, here's a fairly, obvious example or possibility in Indiana Jones and the Seven Veils by Rob McGregor. I already mentioned that Indiana was partially based on Colonel Fawcett. In this book, Colonel Fawcett's writings have turned up. Indiana Jones decides to take hold of them and look for the lost city of Z himself. Lots of action to keep the reader occupied, a little bit of romance, and a little bit of education regarding the Amazon rainforest and the great era of exploration. Overall, I'd say The Lost City of Z is a great read, and I would call it a definite adventure movie in book form.